you, and I'll call on Dr. Ewart Brown. Thank you.
Hello there. The song says, it's been a long, long time. How am I doing? I guess I'm doing fine. It's been so long now, but it seems like it was only yesterday. Ain't it funny how time just slips on away? The most important question, as I channel Al Green, is, how's your new love? But I'll get back to that. On a very serious note, thanks, Laverne, for that wonderful and personal introduction. And thank you for being my defender-in-chief. I want to especially say a welcome to the Premier, Honorable Michael Dunkley, and his cabinet members who are here tonight. To my leader, Mr. Mark Bean, and his wife, Simone. Protocol has been established, and it is late, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I merely want to say to everyone, in particular, family, Bermuda healthcare family, I want to say it to my nuclear family, thank you for coming this evening. I want to especially thank the Bermuda Industrial Union, the President, Chris Ferbert, the General Counsel, and the membership for this distinct honor. Normally, I help the union to find speakers. And so when I was asked if I would do this, I was particularly honored. As we all know, one can go all over the world and speak and attempt to spout wisdom. But there's nothing like coming home to talk to your sisters, your brothers, your friends, and family. So that is the context in which I wish to address you this evening. It is as your family. We are family. Remember that. What does that mean? That means that as a family member, I have the privilege, indeed the responsibility, of being able to tell you where I think you are right and where I think you are wrong. It means that I can be frank and tell you the truth as I see it and as you might need to hear it. It means that I will pull no punches and I will swing with no holes barred as I share with you the indisputable truth. It means that a few of you, as a matter of fact, many of you, might not like what I have to say. But I'm not going to let that bother me. I'm older than some of you. I can probably run faster than others of you. And I know how to make a quick exit. You may or may not recall a meeting years ago when I was running for the leadership of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. I was speaking and banged on the podium for emphasis while proclaiming, and I quote, "If you do not want change, do not vote for me." I thought about that tonight because I have a similar warning for you. If you do not want to hear the truth as I see it, you may want to leave now. Much later, in 2010, when I held true to the words I uttered to my nuclear family and to you, that I would not seek but one term as the leader of the PLP, I also declared that I was retiring from active politics and that I was going to be watching from the pavilion. Well, I have been watching. I have been truly pleased to see and admire the hard work, vision, and tenacity of the leader of the Bermuda Industrial Union, Chris Ferbert. He has led you well through some very challenging times. Leading a union during prosperous times is difficult enough because everyone wants to be more prosperous. But leading a union through times when unemployment is high and pressure is on not to seek wage increases, indeed to take pay cuts, is as hard as it gets. It is thus inspiring to see the continued strength of the BIU and trade movement in Bermuda. The membership remains vibrant. In a time when words like privatization and mutualization are finding their way into our national discourse, unions must be vigilant and prepared for the next wave of challenges to the cohesion of the labor movement. One thing is certain, the attacks remain the same, and the playbook about how to destabilize our causes is unchanged. The BIU of today remains a target of those who seek to undermine the strength of the organization and its commitment to fair working conditions for its members. And oh, by the way, if the BIU decides to raise its membership dues, that's the BIU's business and no one else's. Since when do the media in this country care about union dues? Brother Chris, I salute you this evening because I do not foresee your job getting easier anytime soon. Many times from my perch in the pavilion, I have been beaming with pride because I've been watching our young people in the PLP, like our smart, fearless leader, Mark Bean, step up to take the helm, passed on by the leader, Freddie Wade, Dame Lois, and former premiers Dame Jennifer, Alex, and Paula. Often I've been brimming with hope for our island nation as I have seen the new alliance of the BIU, the BPSU, and the Voiceless that has come together as the People's Campaign under the leadership of Reverend Nicholas Tweed. Quite often, though, I have been saddened and at the point of tears, most memorably on December 17, 2012, when the Bermuda Progressive Party lost the election to the United Bermuda Party. That was not a slip of the tongue. The PLP lost to the UBP. You remember the Shakespeare quote, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet." Basically, that quote says that what matters is what something is, not what it's called. Well, the UBP, by any other name, is still the UBP. So from the pavilion, I was left to ask myself, how in the world did that happen? After working so hard for so long, how did we let the UBP back into power? I will tell you why and how. As the late Malcolm X was portrayed as saying in the movie about his life, we were had, we were took, we were hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. We were had by our political enemies and by our lack of faith in our friends. There are a couple of serious quotes from Malcolm that probably tell the story. He said, "The media is the most powerful entity on the earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. That's power, because they control the minds of the masses," unquote. He also said, "If you're not careful, newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing." And that is in great part what happened. The PLP was painted as a spendthrift party who got the country in debt and stole all of its money. The party that didn't know how to govern and didn't know how to rule. We were painted as the party who gave our friends and family the business. Do you even know who's getting the business now? No, you do not, because you are not being told. You are not being fed hogwash every day about the sitting government or its ministers. The companies that get business are not being torn to shreds or castigated and investigated by a rabid press that tarnishes their images for years to come. The current OBA government is doing everything it wants to do, and there's not a word about it going on in the press. Do you hear the silence? When was the last time you saw an article about how much someone spent on a trip? When was the last time you saw an article that told you how much the premier's hotel room costs? Imagine with me for a moment. Imagine that it was I, when I was premier, who flew to Washington in a private jet with a couple of my ministers, and that my host, who paid for everything, was someone who had every intention of owning a casino in Bermuda. Do you think that you would know all about this had it not been for the brilliant, brave reporting of I.O. Johnson? I.O. deserves your support in his new venture, and we need and deserve reporting that will balance the daily newspaper. Thanks, I.O. So now back to Jetgate. If it were a PLP government involved, let's be honest, do you think that the scandal would no longer be news? Where are the newspaper stories? Where's the investigative journalism? Imagine that it was the PLP government who promised the people of Bermuda a referendum on gaming before the election, but then coincidentally, after meeting with the private jet host, decided and announced there would be no referendum. Do you hear the silence? Imagine that it was the PLP government leaders admittedly meeting with someone about securing the right to build and own a casino in Bermuda, and as a direct result of that government meeting, the PLP or some affiliate of the PLP received $350,000. Do you think that the scandal would no longer be news? What about the U.S. consultant who is thought to have brokered the deal? Has anyone done any research on his company, his partner's past, as was done with Global Hue? This consultant is someone who was working for the OBA before and since the election, and who is said to have formed a company for the sole purpose of securing an $80,000 tourism contract for 8 weeks of work. Oops, did I mention that the Minister of Tourism is thought to be a close friend? Did I mention that this consultant is said to have no experience in tourism? Have you seen any stories about this? Do you hear the silence, people? Imagine that the PLP was still in power, and the leader and the deputy leader of the opposition stood up in Parliament and declared that they were offered bribes by government leaders. And then those same opposition leaders, without the benefit and protection of Parliament, repeated those allegations outside. Where are the police? Where is Whitehall? Where's the governor? When a lying, thieving snake by the name of David Bolden stood up in court on the day that his criminal trial for 18 theft and money laundering charges was going to the jury, they were visible. When this convicted liar said he was afraid to go to a meeting because he thought he might run into me and I might try to bribe him, they were all visible. They said they were bringing in help from the United States to investigate, presumably the FBI. Why doesn't anyone ask the FBI to investigate Jetgate? There's a major U.S. component to Jetgate. Do you hear the silence? Do you want to know why I ask these questions? I ask them because our PLP government would have been asked these questions and many more. I am reminded of an unexpected encounter with a former patient of mine in the airport a few months ago. she whispered to me that I should read the Bible story about Haman and Mordecai. I did just that. The story is told in the book of Ruth that the king was told by Haman that Mordecai was undermining the king. The king ordered Mordecai to build a gallows so Mordecai could be hanged. But Queen Esther petitioned the king on Mordecai's behalf and explained to the king that in reality it was Haman who was undermining the king. The king was enraged and ordered that Haman, not Mordecai, be hanged on the very same gallows that Haman had built for Mordecai. The moral of that story is God is always at work. The bad things that you plan for others, such as the towering gallows that were built for Mordecai, may be used to execute you. You may fall into the trap laid by your own hands and reap what you sowed. As I understand it, I am still being investigated, Brother Chris, by the police. Over 3 years after this lie was told. There are many people who believe that the reason that they will always keep an open investigation on me is because they are afraid I might come back into politics. So they keep their dirty playbook in play. No problem. The room is not sold out tonight because Government House bought the tickets. There is still something wrong with this picture, and I will tell you what it is. The PLP government and its leaders have been and still are treated differently than the OBA government. By the governor, by the police, the British Commonwealth, and the press. That is discrimination in its rankest form. It is inexcusable. We are second-class citizens in our own country, and it is wrong. By way of example, I need to spend a little more time on myself and perhaps share some things you don't know or haven't thought about. I can use my story, because I know it, as an example of how Brother Malcolm's idea of bamboozling works. You see, what happens is you get distracted. People fool you with stories of what and how much I'm stealing. And while you're looking at me, they make off with everything. Some of you, like Laverne said, still believe that I have cedar beams in my house. Some of you still believe that I stole money from the government. I took kickbacks from government contracts. Well, let me say for once and for all that any and all allegations, innuendo, gossip, tales, and stories about my taking anything from the government are absolute and total lies. There are at least 4 reasons you should believe this. 1, I'm not a thief. My mother and father raised me better than that. I don't believe in stealing, period, and I did not steal from the government. I believe in giving to scholarships for children's education, to programs like Mirrors, to football teams who help youngsters develop their potential, to people who are in need, to my beloved Howard University, and in order to take good care of my family and friends. I give money that my wife and I earn through our hard work. The second reason is that my mom and daddy didn't raise no fool. As former Premier Alex Scott says, I heard them when they drove up. With the truths I told and the way I governed, I knew these people would be coming after me. First of all, you cannot hide anything. All of this talk you hear about taking money and hiding it offshore is pure hogwash. You can't hide anything in this electronic Big Brother age. I never attempted to steal anything, and I never attempted to hide anything. I always knew that every receipt for everything I bought, inside and outside of government, would be examined. Whenever my wife and I traveled, let me be clear, my wife bought all of her airline tickets 100% of the time. My former colleagues will tell you that. But I will tell you what else we did. If we stayed in a hotel and ordered room service, on the morning we checked out, my assistant would take 2 credit cards to the desk, one for the government and one for my wife. We would split the room service charges in half, and we would pay for those personally. Why would we do this when we were traveling on official business and my wife was working hard to represent Bermuda as the wife of its premier? We did it because we knew they would be coming after us for any little thing, whether it was a justifiable expense or not. So we always lived as if every receipt and every transaction would be examined. We have absolutely nothing to hide, and we sleep well at night. We know that if they ever find anything, you can rest assured it's because they put it there. Thirdly, these people know where we earn our money. They have access to everything. They have people in banks and insurance companies who know the exact origin of our money. That is why there's an all-out assault on our clinics and our doctors. They want and intend to put me out of business. They want to do that as soon as possible. In the past several months, I've had to defend our clinics before virtually every regulatory agency in Bermuda. So while they keep this investigation open on me, presumably for something they're trying to find or manufacture that I did while in public office, they are at the same time constantly chipping away at the real source of most of our revenues, our business. There's a fourth reason you should know about as to why I have never taken anything from government. It is simple. God has blessed me abundantly, and I am grateful. Now I have to share one more story on my wife. We were on Martha's Vineyard, where Wanda has been going for the past 34 years, and where she bought her first home in 1990, 24 years ago. We passed by one of her female Wall Street colleagues' homes, which had recently been purchased, a fabulous property. My wife said to me that she envied this woman. That was strange because Wanda doesn't talk like that, so I knew she was speaking tongue-in-cheek. When I asked why, she responded that her female colleague was a single mother who had a similar position on Wall Street and had sent 3 children through college and bought a fabulous house, without it having been implied that she stole anything. I recount that to illustrate that what my wife and I have is what our parents wanted for us, and what you want for your children when you sacrifice so much for them to do better. We have what many people like us have who have gone to school and worked for years to become a doctor and an investment banker who is also an attorney. Some of us, some have more than us, and some have less, but there's nothing untoward. If I was white, some might call me a self-made man, but that's impossible because I am not white. I must have stolen what I have. Finally, and this is not a reason, this is an admonition. Think. Think for yourselves. If there was some evidence of having stolen money or taken some kickback, you and I would have seen it by now. It would have been plastered in the news, and I would be in jail already, although I might be tomorrow morning after this speech. These people have gotten into your head so much that my close friends and supporters will say things to me like, I don't care how much they say you steal, you're still the best leader we had. Or you can steal all day long, you still won't catch up to them and you're still a good leader. You think those are compliments, but they're not. They're evidence of how much you have let these people work your minds. That's how bamboozling works. You get so preoccupied with what our mutual enemies say about me, some of you believe them, that you join together against me. You believe all the lies they printed about the PLP, misappropriating funds and stealing $800 million. You coalesce against the PLP. You do not vote for the PLP. You cannot bring yourself to vote for the OBA, so you stay at home. Voila, that's the answer to my question. You were hoodwinked. That is how the UBP got the government back. You don't have to tell me, but I know some of you in this very room voted for the OBA. You drank the Kool-Aid. And some of you who did not vote for the OBA stayed home and didn't vote at all, which was in fact a vote for the OBA. But don't worry, there's still a chance you might get to heaven. You can redeem yourselves. Speaking of heaven, Derek Burgess is in the audience, and he was giving me some advice about some of the Christian references in my speech, and Derek always, has something to say. But I want to say tonight, while I have the microphone, wake up and see that our country is being taken away from working people. We don't matter to this government. Do you understand the significance of this PRC issue? Do you really understand? Do you really understand what 15 additional voters and their children on the rolls will do to electoral politics in Bermuda? Do you understand that they understand? That they know that if 1,500 PRCs are added to the rolls, there's a good chance that the PLP will never regain power, at least not in our lifetime. Wake up and see that the last opportunities for wealth creation are being given away before your very eyes. We don't matter to the OBA government. Reflect on how many hotel deals have been and are being inked with deal terms that make them extraordinarily attractive. Whose friends and family do you think are getting those? Wake up and see that the jobs to be had are not being given to us. I heard that our former Premier Paula was on the radio saying she couldn't find a job in Bermuda. A former Premier, lawyer who worked in the captive insurance business, a former Attorney General, she cannot find a job in Bermuda. What about Morgan's Point? Paula knows Morgan's Point up and down and around. She signed the deal that conveyed the property to Brian, Allen, and Nelson. She worked at ACE with Brian for years. There's no job for her at Morgan's Point. Bank of Butterfield, where are you? Former Premier Paula knows you intricately. She studied your balance sheets, championed your cause when you were failing, and ensured the $200 million loan guarantee for you. Now hold on. I'm not talking about quid pro quo, as in because she did it for them, they should do it for her. I'm talking about one of our smart, talented attorneys who is one of the most experienced people around, and she cannot find a job, even though I just named at least 3 entities where we all know she has special knowledge. There is something wrong with this picture, people. Wake up and see that the casinos are coming to Bermuda, and the rights to operate them are said to have already been promised. Why can't the people of Bermuda be involved in those deals? Why can't the people of Bermuda be involved in those deals? Why can't a new corporation be formed that allows all Bermudians to invest in gaming? With sums as little as $100 or as large as $1 million. Why can't licenses be granted to the Bermuda Citizens Gaming Corporation and casino operators be made to deal with Bermuda citizens the same way they have to deal with Native Americans in casino deals all over the United States? Wake up and see that you're looking at me cross-eyed and my looking at you evil-eyed does not matter in the scheme of things. Our country is at stake. We need to unite, people. And that gets me back to one of my views from the pavilion. I saw that there was a letter being circulated which stated that people should stay in their own lanes. I guess that meant that preachers should preach, labor unions should organize and move around labor issues, and that politics should be left to the politicians. I know it was a well-meaning and well-intended letter, but I have to speak on it because I promised you the truth. And the truth is this: if Madiba, the Honorable Nelson Mandela, had stayed in his lane as a lawyer or as a prisoner, he might not have become the greatest revolutionary of all time. He might not have gone on to become the first duly elected president of South Africa and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, inspiring peoples of all nations, creeds, and colors to peacefully fight for freedom and justice. If Brother Malcolm X had stayed in his lane as a burglar and a pimp, he might not have changed the lives of countless young black men who found hope and self-esteem as a result of his teachings. He might not have lived just long enough to become one of the most influential African Americans of all time. If the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had stayed in his lane as a violinist and calypso singer, we might have never seen the everlasting beauty of the Million Man March in Washington, where black men from all over the world recommitted to their families and communities. If our own Dr. E.F. Gordon had stayed in his lane as a doctor, where would we be today? If our AME church leaders, who have played a pivotal role in the advancement of black Bermudians by their work outside the pulpit, had stayed in their lanes, we would not remember the names Foster, Tobit, and Monk. We don't need to focus on our lanes. We need to focus on our destination and forge every union we can. I call it the concept of functional unity. Functional unity is at play when we come together around a common goal and we unite and take the steps necessary in order to reach that goal. I will give you a present-day example which will illustrate what we are up against politically. The UBP so wanted power that they disbanded and reformed and rebranded themselves as the OBA. They understood that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to win an election in Bermuda with a white leader. So what did they do? They found black ones. I say that because it's true. I say that with all admiration and respect for the two black former leaders of the UBP who have crossed over and joined the PLP, Wayne Furbert and Kim Swan. These are brave people who knew what was happening in our country and who could no longer abide standing with those who are making mincemeat of everyday Bermudians. Also in their ranks are Darius Tucker, Jamal Simmons, and Gwyneth Rollins. I salute and commend you all. Now let me get back to my illustration of functional unity. The OBA saw Craig Cannonier as someone who they believed was electable in Bermuda, but they didn't have a seat for him. So John Barrett resigned his safe OBA seat in order for Craig to run for it and win it. That, my friends, is what is meant by functional unity. John Barrett did not love Craig Cannonier. What's love got to do with it? The members of the OBA did not necessarily love Craig Cannonier. You can tell that by the way they've treated him when they no longer had use for it. Craig had probably not been a member for as long as others who thought they should have their turn, but he stepped ahead of many, nonetheless, including our current Premier, the Honorable Michael Dunkley. These OBA members, in their mischievous wisdom, admirable ambition, and undistracted willpower, saw Craig as the leader that they needed to win back the government. And that's what they did on December 17, 2012. Now the question we need to ask ourselves as Bermudians who are concerned about Bermudians is, what do we need to do in order to win back the government? Because nothing else will stop the bleeding. Do we have the grit and the selflessness of a John Barrett? Do we have the patience of a Premier Dunkley? Do we have the grit of the OBA? Can we exercise that type of functional unity? I say we can and we must. We must return the government to the PLP. I will say this in another way. I'm calling for an organized effort to take back the government, starting right now, right here. We cannot afford to wait 3 more years for an election. There will be nothing left for our people. We must unite. We must reconnect with ourselves. We must be prideless. We must be driven. We must have singular focus. Terry and Randy, we need you to come home and be on the right side of history. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the time is always right to do the right thing. PLP defectors to the OBA, we need you to listen to that prickly conscience that must bother you more and more each day as you see how this government has deceived you. Dr. King would say, never, never be afraid to do what's right. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way. To OBA parliamentarians who care about everyday Bermudians and see what is happening, Dr. King might advise, conscience asks the question, is it right? For there comes a time when one must take the position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must do it because his conscience tells him it is right. And PLP, we need you to open your arms and accept whoever comes home. The Bible says, put a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Just as the Lord forgave you, you should also forgive. I'm not asking you to love each other. I'm asking you to work together towards a common goal, the return of Bermuda to Bermudians. Let's do something about a black unemployment rate that is 4 times the white unemployment rate. I will end with a quote from the famous Helen Keller, a great champion of labor rights. She said, "The world is moved not only by the mighty shoves of the heroes, but also by the aggregate of the tiny pushes of each honest worker. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much." PLP, BIU, BPSU, People's Campaign, churches, mosques, workmen's clubs, football clubs, cricket clubs, men, women, boys, and girls, wake up. Bermuda will not get better if we just let it be. We must work together towards change, you and me. Thank you for this awesome privilege.
Now, the next voice you will hear will be Brother President Chris Furbett with the closing remarks.
Can I ask the guest speaker, Dr. Honorable Yurt Braun, to come back to the mic, please? We have a small token of our appreciation to give to Dr. Braun. And it says, thank you to Dr. Ewart Braun. The Bermuda Industrial Union expresses our sincere gratitude and appreciation for being our guest speaker at our 33rd Annual Labor Day Banquet, August 29, 2014. Thank you. Oh, yeah.